Joel Shapiro, stick figure. Joel Shapiro is quite a famous sculptor, and I think that Dan always liked this piece. If you look at it, it looks like a person more or less, going like this. And I see it as an expression of joy and openness. And I think she put it outside of her house. I think it's the spirit that she wanted to be always reminded of, that spirit of joy and openness. So Tom Otterness, this bear here is, you may have seen it by the pond, and at first you might think his shoulders are just kind of slumped in sort of despair, but in point of fact, he's cited by the pond because the artist really liked the idea of the bear looking for fish. And so he's kind of got his eye on the water in that way. When I turned 50, what was that, a couple of weeks ago? My mother said, well, what would you like for your birthday? And I thought, I don't know. Well, actually, there was this sculpture I saw the other day down at an art fair. And so she checked on it. It was at part of the John McGruin Gallery, but who's a local, has a gallery across the street from SF MoMA on Howard Street in San Francisco. And John, it turned out that he had that out at his place in Napa. And so she bought that as a present for me. Because I said to her, look, Mom, if you give me this as a present, you will get to enjoy it out of the ranch. Oh, yeah. So anyways, I'll take it. Actually, a friend of mine, a young artist in San Francisco, she's probably around 30 or so. And she's a prolific painter. And I think that there's just I like that it's colorful, and although it's abstract, you can see forms in it or shapes in it. I think that her work has just been acquired by the Berkeley Art Museum, and I think there's been some interest at SF MoMA. So I always find it exciting when we're able to support the work of emerging artists, and so she's one of them. So, Stephen DeStabler, Bay Area artist, I think no longer with us, but very highly regarded sculptor. And he had a major retrospective a couple of years ago. Nan was still around to see it at the Fine Arts Museum, the DeYoung Museum in Golden Gate Park. And his work, it's interesting because although it's made in the early 21st and late 20th century, often it's incomplete, but it kind of gives it the sense of being ancient. The way the statue in the Louvre has lost its wings, or its things have been broken off, but it gives it a sort of timeless quality. And I think it's interesting the way he's explored those things that we usually attribute to ancient sculpture and the ravages of time to his work as he creates it. Wayne Thiebaud, Ballpark Frank, a horrible reproduction. Much darker than the actual painting is. And, I think, I don't know whether Wayne painted this for Nan, but Nan always loved hot dogs. If you asked her what her favorite food was, she would probably say hot dogs. And much of his, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, the subjects of a lot of his paintings are food. You'll see like these cakes up here were actually painted by Wayne Thiebaud here on the property for Nan, just as something Wayne did because they were friends. And he's in his 90s now, absolutely clear as a bell, and he's perhaps America's greatest living painter. Although people thought of him, as the guy who painted cakes, in fact, for him, those were all just exercises in color and line and the application of paint, which is often very thick on the canvases. And so he's the Stabler, Tebow, these are artists who Nan knew and liked to support because they were in part because they were Northern California artists. So she was always concerned with this community that we live in. And Wayne himself, not to go on and on about this, used to come here to the harvest party every year in November. And that party was around the time of his birthday. And so the two things that were noteworthy were just that we would always have a cake, and if he would sit with Nan at her table, and they would, and his wife when she was alive. But also, Nan would call up and she would say to Sharon, her assistant, call Wayne and ask him to do an invitation for the harvest party. And if I heard this, I would say, no. Ask Wayne Tebow for an invitation. And then she would say, just get him on the phone. And the next thing I knew, there would be an invitation for the harvest party. Henry Moore, great English, 20th century English sculptor. Somewhat of an unusual piece. Usually he did figures, somewhat abstracted, a lot of female figures, sort of like odalisques, women lying on their side, and really quite beautifully realized. This is one of the more abstract pieces, and Nan always really loved it. To me, it looks a bit like somebody grabbed a bunch of mud and just kind of squeezed it. But, it's what it is. And art, as we say, is kind of in the eye of, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And so, make up your own mind. A lot of my collection is photography. It's something, loving art and liking to collect it is something my mother and I shared. It may in fact have been a family curse that was first, was expressed by my great-grandfather, M.H. DeYoung, who founded the DeYoung Museum with his collection. But in any event, it's like I'm still trying to get the needle out of my arm, but I do like to collect them. This piece I've had for a while. I think Joanne is an exceptionally fine photographer. She has done a series of olive trees in Italy, and recently came to the ranch to do more photography. And we just gave her the run of the place for about 2-3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so I think we'll begin to see a lot of photography from McEvoy Ranch. But I've had this for a number of years, and she was thrilled to see it here. And so it was. She's somebody that we have an ongoing relationship with. A rabbit. And I don't know much about Michael Boris. I think it was might have been Michael Booth who suggested she put it on top of the gate at the entrance to the property. Michael Booth is the interior designer Nan worked with on a number of, on her house, on much of the ranch really. And they were always they were very close, sort of would always come up with these sort of fanciful ideas which seemed to, amuse them both. And again, I think that every time she came up to the ranch, she would look at this rabbit and it would make her smile because it's so ridiculous. So, the Beatles. And this was the cover of the album Abbey Road. And this large replica of that cover hung at Tower Records at Columbus and Bay in San Francisco when the album was released. What Tower Records would do at the time was they had a sign painter they always worked with, and when albums came out, he would recreate it on a big piece of wood that hung outside the record store. And so I saw this one at a benefit auction for Project Open Hand and bid on it and got it. But I think it's kind of fantastic. I even like the provenance of it, the fact that it came from a record store that's since fallen apart. Just almost all record stores have disappeared. And so it's It's, you know, not an original work of art, but it is, I got a quite authentic heritage. Well, what is this? No, this is, we recently opened the foundation in San Francisco in an area called Dog Patch, which is just off 3rd Street, below the ballpark, near Mission Bay, where the UCSF is now. In fact, it's just off Cesar Chavez and east of the freeways. And it's just a large exhibition space, which is now it's free and open to the public, and open 5 days a week, like our normal hours of art galleries. And it's in a building with 2 other art galleries and a block away from another building with a dozen art galleries and another building that has studios for artists in San Francisco. A couple I know, Deborah and Andy Rappaport, who were very successful investors in Silicon Valley, decided to use their wealth to help keep artists in San Francisco, to help provide affordable space for the gallerists and affordable studio space for the artists. And so they had some leftover space, and they offered it to me to program, and they said, if you ever thought of creating a foundation. And so I said, no. But then I started thinking about it, and I realized it was something that I could do and could take the art I have out of storage and display it. And also what we're finding is now we can do shows like the last show, which involves some art from my collection, some art that we have borrowed from other collectors, and then some art that actually we show in partnership with institutions. So we had a show of videos that we did with the Berkeley Art Museum, did a show of photographs by Philip Lorca de Corsia from my collection, and we did another show of spoken word pieces by Constance Dion that were embedded in vintage radios. I own a couple of those, we borrowed the rest. And so I think with that sort of model, we can really go on for quite a while doing things. And you're all welcome to come anytime. Nor I ever had any real formal education in art or the arts, so it's all something that we just loved and picked up by looking, going to museums, talking to people, which is something that I highly encourage for you all. I mean, it's just a wonderful world to get to know more about. Like Nan, I'm on a couple of museum boards now. One of them is SF MoMA, where they're opening a Rene Magritte show actually tonight, which I think will be great. A great surrealist artist from the early 20th century. And the Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington, D.C. And if any of you are going there this summer, let me know. I'd be happy to give you tips. There we just opened a show on the art of Burning Man, which has been insanely popular. And we'll be there through the summer and some parts of it through the year. People and bring it to people. And so the art that's placed around here is not only for our pleasure, but for your pleasure and inspiration. And we hope you'll bring that sense of art, of creativity, of exploration, of the joy of making things to your work here at where we are. McEvoy. Yeah, Chronicle books too. We're going to use it as well.